Today let me start creating the entity. Okay, so entity, whatever data we will get from the front end, will store, will create objects of the entity class to store that data. Okay, so whatever data will flow in the application will be of the type entity. So as discussed, okay, so this is my backend. So whatever data I will send or receive from the front end, so this data, this trading, this trading of data will be done in the form of entity objects. So you will receive the data, so that data should be mapped to some entity object. So let's say if I am saving the record of a student, so this is my front end form. So I'm accepting the roll number, student name, student email. Let's say these three things I'm expecting the front end to enter: roll number, student name, student email. Okay, and then when I click on save, this data should be saved to the database. This is my last component in the Spring Boot lifecycle. So there should be a database table which will have 3 columns. Okay, roll number, name, and email. Roll number, name, and email, and whatever I enter over here, 101 Alice. Okay, Alice at the rate blah blah blah. When I click on save, that record should be added over here. 101 Alice and Alice whatever. So now I need some, when I click on this save, I need some class to hold this data, right? So that class is called as the entity class. So now if I want to, and when we do JPA, Java Persistence API, so JPA is mapping the object to table. It's just simple object to table mapping. So what happens in JPA is, I will create a class with these properties. Okay, integer roll number, string sname, and string email, and annotate this class as entity. So whichever class you create as entity should have the ID column, the primary key column. So without ID this will not work. So this I will mark as the ID column, and then we can generate values. So ID column is mandatory. And now when I run this application, automatically in the database a table will be created, and default name of the table will be the name of the class. So the table name will be student, and all those properties, the individual properties will become the columns of that class. So my first column is roll number, second column is s name, third column is email. You can have the same name or you can choose a different name, that in the uh, table, that in the class the property name is different, but I want a different name in the database table. So if you don't specify, it will take the same name, and if you want to change the name, you can have the at column annotation. So you can have the add column and then you can give name. So in the class it is s name, but in the database table it should be stud name. So we can specify our own customized name also. So like this we have to create a entity class. So let's go and create entity class over here. Okay, so now I have made a class student, annotated it with add entity. Okay, this entity you will get in the JPA dependency. So whenever, if you want to use database connectivity, so add this dependency SpringBoot starter data JPA. Okay, and this entity will come from the persistence package. See here, persistence entity. Now what all attributes do I want to put in my entity? Now we can mention over here. Okay, so first let's put private integer roll number, private string s name, that's private string email. We also put private int age. Okay, now one column has to be the primary key. So one column has to have the @id annotation. Okay, capital I. Okay, so without the @id column, entity is invalid. You cannot have an entity class without having the @id. One column should have the @id annotation. Now how will you generate value for this primary key? So you have generated value for id. So okay, and now there are many ways we can generate the values. You have to get a strategy for that. Okay, and if you want the values to be auto incremented, okay, import this id of persistence. Then you have to say generation type, and these are the options you have. Okay, if you wanted auto incremented, that I will not provide the roll number MySQL will auto increment 1 2 3 4. So you have to give auto, and if you want to give your own, then you can give identity, that I will give my own roll numbers. So let's take auto. Now this is this is sufficient for our entity class. So now if I run this application in my database, so what database have I configured? In the application properties, you have to give the configuration. So what we would give in the JDBC, the URL, username and password. So that we will give over here. So this is my database. So let me create one more database for you all. Okay, so let's create this database. So that's all what I've done over here, just created a database. Now when I go and run my application, okay, so my database is created. This is the username, password, and this is my driver. Okay, and just have to add this dialect. So depending on your driver, you have to add a dialect for that driver. So if it is MySQL, then MySQL dialect, Oracle, then Oracle. This is just a sample application properties, basic flavor of application properties. You can keep on adding as much as properties as you want in this. So now just go and run the application. So you will see that the database table has automatically been created. Okay, database application has started. Now go to your database and then just refresh it. You see, student table has come over here. You see a student table over here, and that table will have the columns which we have specified. So where is our database? SAMDB, and here you have the student table with all the attributes which we had specified. So now if you wanted to change the name, so if you wanted to give email as your full email, then come to the entity, and over here you can give over here @column COLUMN, and then you can specify the name of your database table. So if you wanted to give, okay, let's say you wanted to check E. Okay, here I wanted to give stud name. So column, and you can say name equals to student name. Okay, you can also specify other attributes also. Okay, so do you want this field to have null values? So you can say comma nullable. Nullable what? True or false? Nullable true means it can have null value, so name cannot be null, so I'll say nullable as false. Okay, and what is the length? What should be the maximum length a name should be? So let's say keep the length as 10 characters, not more than that. So you give len, control space bar length, you have the length attribute, so let's say length as 10. So like this you can specify all your constraints over here. Okay, email I want it to be unique. Okay, I want email to be unique, so what you can do is @column, and then you can say unique equals to true. Don't want duplicate emails. Okay, for this also I guess we have some annotation min also. You know, there is no min. Let's say it might be a part of the column attribute. If it has, no, there is no. So we could have set some minimum or maximum value for this page. There's some provision for that also, that we can set some minimum, maximum, some range we can set for the age, that age should be in this range. Let me check that out. Okay, now if I run, stop this and do a rerun, all these changes will take effect. So in my class the property name will be s name, but in the table it will be student. Okay, you can also change the name of the table also if you want. Okay, if you want to change the name of the table, that also can be done. Okay, so you can give @table annotation and then specify whatever name you want for that table. So if let's say if you want to name the table as stud, import this table annotation. So this all changes can be done. Now see the difference in the database when I run this application. So this is JPA, direct object to table mapping. Just create the object, the table will be created automatically in the database. So started. Now go and refresh your database. Okay, take a print screen of this, and then we can compare what changes happened. Okay, so okay, now the table is created. You will see over here stud. Refresh. Now I have got the stud table, and that table has this. Yes, no, maybe. So whatever data will come in the, like this. You can create as many entities you want, and tables for all those entities will be created over there. If you want to create one more entity, let's say student, and let's say you want to create an entity called as department. So how to create it? Annotate it with add entity. If you want to give the same table name, I would recommend that we use the same table name. No need to play around with that. Integer department number, keep it private. Okay, and private string department name. So what should be the primary key in this? So mark it as @id, and then take the generated value over here. Okay, and then give the strategy to that, and from the strategy you can give generation type or import. Okay, import it from the persistence one. Okay, don't go to the hibernate one, go to the persistence. And now this is sufficient. Now you can add your getter setters also over here, your constructors also in the entity, your toString method, your hash code, equals method, whatever you want to add, you can add over here. So source, generate getter setters for their private fields, right? So generate getter setter for that, generate all args constructor using fields. I want for both of them. Then I want a default no args constructor also. Then if I also want a toString method, so does this help us to write a toString method? Generate toString. Okay, so this will, so all this can be in your entity class. Save. Now try to run, so you will have all those tables created. Yeah, department table also is created. Alright. Any guesses why we are getting this orange line? Because it is not being used. So that is called as warning. So you have a suppress warning annotation. So you can use that to remove all your warnings. So you can say, and I'm adding the warnings for unused. So if you see any variable which is not used, don't give me warnings. So my this side is clean. So you can use the suppress warnings, that if this age is unused, please don't give me warning. Suppress that warning. But we don't use that much. Try to understand this attribute update and create drop. Okay, so in our application properties we have mentioned this. Okay, other we have not mentioned it, so let's mention it now. So what is it? Spring data, copy, and now I am putting it. So create drop, what will it do is, now we had changed the settings for the student table, right? And named it stud, but still it was showing us both the tables. If you see in your database, it is still showing us both the tables, student also and student also, because it was by default update. So when I now switch it to, which setting did I switch it to now? Create drop. So what will create drop do? Will drop. So when the application will stop, or when it will rerun, first it will drop all the tables and then only create the ones which I want. So which two I want now? Department and student. So department and stud. So it will drop the student table. This table will be dropped. This table will not be there. So I will have just two tables when I run the application now, stud and department. Let's check that out. So I stop my application, do a rerun. First, now the property I have used is create drop. I drop all the tables, I empty the database. Now go do a run. Okay, now it won't see. Now what error it all you all will get, because the port is already occupied. There is an application running on 8084. So this will break, and see, the port 080 is already in use. So what we have to do is, if I stop this, one, you will see that there's also one is running still. That's why I stop this and I stop everything. Then I do a rerun. So now this should have the table student department. Yes. And what was the other thing? Change to DDL none. Then I noticed that I didn't specify. I did not. I did some research and found that it is recommended to add create drop in development. So now they will explain over here what it actually means. Okay, it has these four options. If I insert some data in the database now, and when I do a rerun, that data will be lost. That data will be lost. Okay. So now if I go to stud and if I insert a record, this is auto increment, right? So you don't have to insert the. You can just go. What happened? Oh, roll number, which should have been some value to it. Roll number, name, age. So you should have not given the roll number at all then in the query. Directly should have given this. Insert into SamDB student, age, email student. Okay, and if I do a go, what happened? How did it create a duplicate entry? Phone number, what it is adding? See. Okay, this was unique, right? This was unique. How is the roll number coming as 0? If in the student, let me insert a record 1 8 18 Umar. This record is there. Now when I stop the application and do a rerun, this record should be lost because we are using create drop. Let's try to rerun the application and see if that Komal record is there or not. Currently I have the record, right? Let's the application start up. Application started. Do a refresh on the database and see if that record is still there. The record is not there because we were using which attribute? Create drop. So now how do we interact? Now how will the controller? So now if I want, now I inserted the record manually from the back end, right? Now I want to insert a record from the front end. That the user will send me the data and I will add that record. So what will I do? I will create an endpoint. Public void add student. Okay. And then what all will I accept of the student? I will accept the name. For roll number is auto increment, right? For roll number I have given. For roll number I have given auto increment. This will be generated by auto. All I have to pass is what? All I have to pass is the student, S name, email and age. S name, email and age. Okay. So S name, email and age. So the controller, so this function I will pass at, now there are three ways of accepting the value from the user, right? So first was what? Request param. So req and request param. Okay. So now what should be the param name when you will pass it from the API dog? So you will say S name, and I will take it here in the method as a method argument as S name. Okay, so this is what you have to specify when you pass it from your front end, and in your Java it will be called as this. The next one more query param we will take. So like this, if you want, you can or arrange it in one line, one after the other, so that it doesn't look dirty. So on the front end I will call it as email, and in my this also I will take it as email, and here on the front end also I will pass it as age, and here I will take it as int age. Okay, now this is my method, right? So where is the method body? So now in your Spring Boot, what you have to do is, does the student class have setter getters? Student class does not have setter getters. source generate setter getters for, yeah, generate for all, no worries. And does the student class have a constructor? So I will be creating object of that. Generate, and I also want a default constructor. This is called as no args constructor. This is called as all args constructor. Okay, now what I'll do in the controller is, see, we have to pass objects. As I told you, I guess in the previous slide, whatever flows between the level, whatever flows from the front end, whatever data comes, which comes to the controller, to the service, to the repository, to the database. So from the front end I will get individual data, roll number, name and email. This will come to the controller, right? Because now the function which I have written in the controller. So controller, and what will flow in the application in the back end? The entity object will flow, right? Last time we had discussed this. So whatever will flow in the application, that will be the entity object. So now what I will do is, I will accept this data over here, which I have taken in the query params. So I have got 101 over here. 101 is by default the auto increment, right? So I have got the student name, I have got the student email, I have got the student age. Now with this I will create an object of the student class. So this is my object, and this object will now flow in the application. This object will now travel. This S will now travel from controller to service, service to repository, repository to database. So what will travel? This S will travel. This S will travel from here to here to here. So the data which travels in the application is your entity data. So I want to first create an object of the student class. So I make object student S1 is new student. Okay, this is a different package, so import it. And now I need to set the attributes of this student. The roll number don't need to set because it is auto increment. So set the name, email and age. So I can call s1 dot set age, and I will pass this age which I have got. Then s1 dot set email, and I'll pass this email which I have got. And s1 dot set s name, and I'll pass the s name. Now this student will be sent to the service. So I will create one service. I'll create a class called as student service. Okay, and this will be my service class. So @service. Okay, so from here, and this student service I will need in the repository. Okay, so this controller will need object of which? Service, and service will need object of repository. So if this is the association, the dependency, controller has dependency on the service, and service has dependency on the repository. So how do I ask the IOC container to give me object of service in controller? So very simple, I go to the controller. Okay, this all is not required now, right? Okay, port number, just return hi. So now I tell that student service stud service, that I want object of this over here. Simply just say what? Auto wired. That's all. And now pass this object to the stud service. So stud service dot add student and pass this object over there. So now we don't have any method in the stud service. So click and then add that method. Create this method. So this method comes over here. The stud service, and the stud service needs what? Repository. So let me make a repository also. That will be interface. Okay. So student repository. Okay, and this extends the JPA repository. Okay, and right now it takes two arguments. For which entity is this student repository made? For student. And what is the type of the primary key? The type of the primary key in the student. What is the type of the primary key? Primary key is roll number, right? To whom we have given the ID. To whom we have given the ID. What is the type? Integer. So put the wrapper class of that over there. So what is the wrapper class of int? Wrapper class of int is integer. Import it. That's all. Just create a blank repository. So automatically we'll get to use the methods. So now this service needs student repository. So we go to service and we say stud repo and what? At the rate auto wired. Okay, this is for a, this is not for a method, no, this is for the class. And now using this stud repo object, in the stud repo object I will call the save method. So there are lots of inbuilt methods in the repository. So one of them is when I click on dot save, and it is asking for an entity object, which is the object I'm getting over here, S1. So this object will be saved to the database, and we are not returning anything. So repository is returning void to student, to the service. So when I go to the service is returning void to the controller. So this student is added. So we are not returning anything. So if you want to return back something to the user, and if you return a public string, so here you can say return student created or student record inserted. That's all. Complete. Now let's try to start the application. Now you have made changes, right? So those changes should take effect. Okay, we did not add any endpoint on the front end. How will we address it? from the front end, how will we address it? So we are adding a record, right? So for inserting, use the post mapping. Use the post mapping. And what endpoint do we have to say? We will say add stud. Okay, and this will be after your base URL. So sbi/v1/add stud. So when we will invoke this, and while invoking this, we have to pass these three as arguments. Okay, so the endpoint was not created, so I had to stop everything again and do a rerun. Now meanwhile go to our API dog, right? Create one, so copy this, because we just have to change the last part of it, right? Just change the endpoints. Just copy this, create one fresh API, but this is the post mapping, right? So method post, and what are we saying? Add student. Add student. And what are the, okay, add student using request param. Okay, so what parameters you have to pass? Params, so you see over here params. Now you can pass the params over here. So param, what is the first param which we have to pass? This should match, this param should match with the one which I have given the double quotes over here. Okay, so you can put it over here also, or if you understand the URL, you can put a question mark over here, and you can put a question mark over here. Save this, save this. Okay, now when you're trying to run it, this, okay, you come over here, put a question mark and give the value. Okay, so here I give s name as Ben. Then if you want to add one more, you give a and sign, right? And email, okay, it's adding in the params over here. It's adding in the params. You can add in the params also if you want. Email as ben@gmail.com. Click below, just keep on adding, and age, let's say you are given 23. So these are the three params which I am passing. So these keywords which I am giving over here, s name, email and age, they should be matching identical with what I am specifying in the double quotes. And these which I am using over here, this I'll use over here while setting the values. Okay, so you can keep it same also, you can keep it different also. Okay, application has started. Okay, so now if I try to hit this endpoint, I should get that response that student record added. Okay, looks good to me. Add student, right? ADD STUD. This is not case sensitive. Okay, so this is no need to give case. Okay, but let's, now we have started the application, right? So we can't change over here now. So looks good to me, and do a post. And if I do a post, it should return me student added. If it all goes well, if everything goes as per plan, it should return perfect student record inserted. And if you want to verify in the database that it has inserted, so you can click on the stud, and you see this automatically got incremented. I didn't pass this because it was auto increment, and this is what I passed. yes, no, maybe. ये जो मैं this I got this message record inserted successfully. So some SQL query might have been fired in the background, right? Some insert query got fired, right? So when the tables were created, when these tables were created, so some SQL query might have executed in the background, correct? When these tables were created in the database, some SQL query got fired in the backend. So what JPA does is it puts a wrapper and it puts all those queries in the background. And if you want to see what queries it is running, so in the application properties you can set one property more. You can set one property, okay, spring jpa dot show sql. क्या है? spring dot jpa dot क्या? और अगर दो वर्ड है, अगर दो वर्ड है तो हम लोग क्या करते हैं, उसको इससे यूज करते हैं, हाइफन डालते बीच में। तो तुमको देखना है क्या क्या है, तो उसको ट्रू कर दो। क्या कर दो? तो अभी हमारे पास ये प्रॉपर्टी सेट नहीं थी, तो हमारे कंसोल पे हमको कुछ नहीं दिख रहा था। तो जब हम लोग ये रन कर रहे थे, we were not seeing any SQL queries. Okay, now if you want to see, it will show you what SQL queries it is firing to create the tables and to insert the record, everything. So if I enhance this console, now you will see what it is doing in the background. Do you see? उसने create table department बना दिया और create table student बना दिया, और जो हमने attribute सेट किए थे उसके हिसाब से बनाया उसने। रोल नंबर को नॉट नल कर दिया, एज नॉट नल है, ईमेल का मैक्सिमम कितना कैरेक्टर्स का ईमेल 255, और स्टूडेंट नेम कर दिया varchar 10 नॉट नल। प्राइमरी की कौन सा दिया? प्राइमरी की किसको दिया? क्यों? क्योंकि उसको ऐड आईडी था ना। तो ये सब जो है ना उसने इंटरनल कर दिया पूरा। और अभी हम जब फायर करेंगे कोई क्वेरी बैकग्राउंड में, तो अभी समझो मैंने यहाँ पर गया और अभी मैंने दूसरा रिकॉर्ड इंसर्ट किया, तो एंड पॉइंट नहीं होता, सिर्फ वैल्यूज चेंज करने का। चार्ल्स 24 ईयर्स का है, ठीक है। मैंने सेंड कर दिया रिक्वेस्ट को, तो क्या लिखा रिस्पॉन्स आया? स्टूडेंट रिकॉर्ड इंसर्टेड। तो कुछ ना कुछ क्वेरी फायर हुई ना बैकग्राउंड में, तो वो ये क्वेरी फायर हुई, देख तुम्हारा प्रीपेड स्टेटमेंट की, याद है? अरे हाँ क्या ना? इज इट विजिबल टू यू गाइस? तो ये क्वेरी जो प्रीपेड स्टेटमेंट की थी ना, तो ये JDBC था। अब ये सब काम हमको खुद को करना पड़ता था ना JDBC के अंदर। हाँ। यहाँ पर सिर्फ हमने एंटिटी क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया, उसको डायरेक्टली फंक्शन को पास कर दिया, बस इसमें ये सारा खेल है। तो जिसको ये खेल समझ में आ गया उसको स्प्रिंग बूट समझ में आ गया कि ये क्या फ्लो हो रहा है। तो इसमें इसके लिए ऑन दैट डे आई हैड एक्सप्लेन्ड दिस, राइट और रॉन्ग? So understanding of this controller, so whatever data I got, I came to the controller, then over there I made an object of the student class, then from the controller I pass it to the, so controller had to call a method of the service class, correct? Yes. Controller had to call method of service class. So if controller wants to call a method of service class, controller should have object of service class, correct? तो या तो वो सेटर से लो, या तो वो कंस्ट्रक्टर में लो, या तो वो किससे लो? ऑटो वायर्ड। तो मैंने ऑटो वायर्ड ले लिया। अब सर्विस विल पास एन ऑब्जेक्ट टू द रिपोजिटरी, so सर्विस विल कॉल मेथड ऑफ द रिपोजिटरी, so service should have object of the repository, correct? Yes sir. So directly what we are using? Auto wired. सिंपल प्रोसेस है. See, so if I run you again through the process, if you see over here, so controller I made the controller is a end point, right? It creates an end point. So and post mapping, क्योंकि हम record insert कर रहे हैं, जब भी कुछ इंसर्शन करते हैं तो पोस्ट मैपिंग यूज करने का. गेट हम करते हैं सिलेक्ट के लिए. तो मैंने ये एंड पॉइंट बनाया, बेस यूआरएल के बाद लगा दिया, और तो जब भी ये एंड पॉइंट कॉल होगा फ्रंट एंड एपीआई से तो ये मेथड इन्वोक होगा. अभी मेथड क्या करेगा, रिक्वेस्ट में जो भी एस नेम ईमेल है उनको इन वेरिएबल में ले लो, ठीक है. फिर मुझे मालूम है कि मुझे ऑब्जेक्ट घुमाना है सारे स्टेजेस में, कंट्रोलर, सर्विस, रिपोजिटरी में. तो ऑब्जेक्ट बना लिया मैंने. अब उसको मैंने मेरे एट्रीब्यूट सेट कर दिए जो मेरे फ्रंट एंड से आए हैं. और फिर क्या करा मैंने, स्टूडेंट सर्विस का एक ऐड स्टूडेंट फंक्शन कॉल कर लिया, उसको वो ऑब्जेक्ट पास कर दिया. अब स्टूडेंट सर्विस मुझे ऑब्जेक्ट बना है किसका, सर्विस का, तो मैंने इसको क्या कर दिया, ऑटो वायर्ड कर दिया. फिर मैं चला गया स्टूडेंट सर्विस में. तो अगर आपको यहाँ से वहां जाना है तो उस मेथड के ऊपर कर्सर लेके जाओ और कंट्रोल दबाओ, कंट्रोल, ठीक है. अब मुझे जाना है इस मेथड में, तो वहां कर्सर लेके जाने का, कंट्रोल दबाने का, तो वो एक लिंक बन जाती. अब उस पर क्लिक करने का, लेफ्ट क्लिक, कंट्रोल छोड़ो मत, कंट्रोल पकड़ के रखो, क्लिक किया उस पर तो अभी इधर आ गया स्टूडेंट रेप, ये आ गया सर्विस में. अब सर्विस कम्युनिकेट करने वाली रिपोजिटरी से, तो उसने रिपोजिटरी का ऑब्जेक्ट बना लिया, और फिर रिपोजिटरी में दुनिया भर के बिल्ट इन मेथड है डेटाबेस से कम्युनिकेट करने के लिए. तो हमने एक उसका फंक्शन कॉल कर लिया सेव, और वो ऑब्जेक्ट वहां पास कर दिया. ये सब वॉइड फंक्शंस थे, तो रिटर्न कुछ नहीं कर रहे थे. समझ में आ रहा? अब समझो कि जो रिकॉर्ड मैंने ऐड किया मुझे वही दिखाना है कि भाई मैंने ये रिकॉर्ड ऐड हुआ है. तो फिर मैं क्या करूंगा, रिटर्न करते क्या बोलूंगा, रिटर्न करते वक्त कि स्टूडेंट क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट रिटर्न कर रहा हूं, वॉइड रिटर्न नहीं कर रहा हूं, ठीक है. तो अब इसका क्या लिख दूंगा मैं, तो सेव भी कर उसको और रिटर्न भी कर दे. अब रिटर्न कर रहा है स्टूडेंट क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट, तो ये सर्विस में अपन, तो सर्विस को कौन कॉल करता है, कंट्रोलर. तो जब कंट्रोलर में हम जाएंगे तो उसको जो सर्विस रिटर्न कर रहा है वो स्टूडेंट क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट रिटर्न कर रहा है. तो कंट्रोलर में जब गया तो अभी यहाँ पर वो कुछ चाहिए एलएचएस में स्टोर करने के लिए, करेक्ट. तो लेट्स से कंट्रोलर बोला कि जो मुझे वहां से आया मैं वही रिटर्न कर रहा हूँ डायरेक्ट. अब वहां से क्या आ रहा है, स्टूडेंट क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट, तो ये स्ट्रिंग तो रहेगा नहीं, तो यहाँ क्या रहेगा, स्टूडेंट क्लास. तो अभी हम लोग जब भी रिकॉर्ड इंसर्ट करेंगे हमको वही रिकॉर्ड दिख जाएगा जो हमने इंसर्ट किया है. तो अभी मैं अगर जाता हूँ एपीआई डॉग में, आ गया, अभी मैं कुछ रिकॉर्ड इंसर्ट करता हूँ, तो अभी क्या लिख के आ रहा है, स्टूडेंट रिकॉर्ड इंसर्टेड, स्ट्रिंग था ना, अभी स्ट्रिंग रिटर्न नहीं करेगा और स्टूडेंट क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट रिटर्न करेगा. तो जो हमने ऐड करेंगे वही ऑब्जेक्ट दिखा देगा अपने को. जेसन फॉर्मेट में. समझ रहे हैं, नहीं समझ रहे हैं? और ये बार बार रोल नंबर 1 क्यों हो रहा है, बार बार रोल नंबर 1 क्यों हो रहा है, ऑटो इंक्रीमेंट क्यों नहीं चल रहा है, क्योंकि आए वाह, अब तुमको समझ में आ रहा है प्रॉपर्टीज कि अपन ने यहाँ पर क्या दिया हुआ है, प्रॉपर्टी को क्रिएट ड्रॉप. अगर मैं इसको कर दूं अपडेट, क्या कर दूं उसको मैं अपडेट, तो क्या होगा इससे, फिर अभी अब नेक्स्ट रन से वो 2 ले लेगा, नेक्स्ट रन पे क्या ले लेगा वो, देखो यहाँ मैंने अपडेट करा, दिख रहा है, नहीं दिख रहा है, दिखिए आते को, या वीडियो देख लेना, वीडियो में देख लेना, उस पर दिख जाएगा. अभी अपडेट हो गया ना ये, ठीक है. तो अभी जब इसको रन करेंगे हम तो देखते हैं क्या होता है. You got to understand the minute differences what happens. Okay, now let me create one more. एलसिड 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 जो है वो 21 ईयर्स की। एप्लीकेशन मेरा शुरू हो गया है, सेंड किया, अभी देखो 2 आया। प्रॉपर्टीज फाइल है ना, एक फ्लैट स्ट्रक्चर है। फ्लैट मतलब देखो सर्वर, देखो स्प्रिंग डॉट जेपीए डॉट हाइबरनेट। अब ये स्प्रिंग जो है इनका पेरेंट है ना। तो ये ट्री स्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, ट्री स्ट्रक्चर जैसे अगर मैं क्या बता रहा हूं मैं, एक होता है ट्री स्ट्रक्चर, क्या होता है देखो, जैसे अभी समझो मुझे बताना है, ठीक है, इनमटेक डॉट फाउंडर फाउंडर डेट फाउंडर डॉट डेट इक्वल्स टू लेट्स से 2010। अब इनमटेक डॉट फाउंडर डॉट नेम, अब इसमें इनमटेक डॉट फाउंडर म्यूचुअल है ना, फिर भी मुझे लिखना लिखना पड़ रहा है ना। तो इससे अच्छा क्या होता कि मैं ऐसा करता, इनमटेक चार स्पेस बार, 1 2 3 4 स्पेस बार, क्या नाम, फाउंडर इक्वल्स टू, ठीक है, और वापस 1 2 3 4 डेट क्या है, ठीक है। अब उसके बाद अगर मुझे भी नेम लिखना है, नेम, तो इनमटेक फाउंडर तो ऑलरेडी है ना मेरे पास, तो डायरेक्ट कहाँ आने का, बात समझ में नहीं आया तुम लोग को क्या बोल रहा हूं मैं। हाँ भाई, तो ये ट्री स्ट्रक्चर हो गया ना। अभी ट्री स्ट्रक्चर में तो डेटा मेरा रिपीट नहीं हो रहा है, इनमटेक डॉट फाउंडर एक ही बार आया है बस। अब अगर उसमें 3 4 भी होते ना मेरे पास, इनमटेक डॉट फाउंडर, उसकी एज क्या है, ठीक है। तो अभी क्या करना है, सिर्फ इनमटेक भी है फाउंडर भी है, तो सिर्फ कहाँ जाना है अपने को, यहाँ पर, नहीं समझ में आ रहा। तो इसको बोलते हैं ट्री स्ट्रक्चर, क्या बोलते हैं इसको, तो ये उसका पेरेंट, ये उसका पेरेंट ना। अरे भाई ट्री स्ट्रक्चर कर दिया ना मैंने अभी उसको, इनमटेक एक ही बार आया है, उसके बाद फाउंडर है। अब फाउंडर के तीन एट्रीब्यूट्स है ना। अब वो कौन से जगह जाके ज्वाइन होता है वो अपने को देखना है। ये इनमटेक हो गया, ये फाउंडर हो गया, और फिर ये डेट, नेम और एज, ठीक है। अब अगर मुझे डालना है इनमटेक डॉट प्रोजेक्ट, अभी अभी क्या होगा, अब प्रोजेक्ट इसका चाइल्ड बन जाएगा इनमटेक, नहीं समझ में आ रहा। तो इसको बोलते हैं YAML फाइल, क्या बोलते हैं इसको, तो ये फ्लैट फाइल को मैंने YAML फाइल में कन्वर्ट कर दिया। तो YAML बोलते हैं येट अनदर मार्कअप लैंग्वेज, क्या बोलते हैं, इसको बोलते हैं YAML, फुल फॉर्म है उसका। तो ये जो एप्लीकेशन प्रॉपर्टीज है ना, ये जो तरीका था लिखने का, इस फाइल का नाम क्या था, एप्लीकेशन डॉट प्रॉपर्टीज है ना, और ये जो तरीका है नीचे नीचे वाला ये वाला, ये है प्रॉपर्टीज डॉट YAML फाइल। क्या है? या एप्लीकेशन डॉट YAML क्या है? YAML लिखो या YML लिखो, एक ही बात है। तो हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, अपनी प्रॉपर्टीज फाइल को YAML फाइल में कन्वर्ट कर सकते हैं। तो ये मैंने क्या किया, पूरा उठाया प्रॉपर्टीज फाइल को, इंटरनेट पे गया और सर्च करा। आप इसे डालोगे तो वो खुद आपको प्रॉम्प्ट कर देगा, प्रॉपर्टीज टू, दिखा क्या? दिखा? दिख रहा क्या? नहीं
स्क्रीन नहीं दिख रही है।
दिख रहा है क्या अभी?
हाँ,
प्रॉपर्टीज YAML कन्वर्जन ऑनलाइन, तो इसको क्लिक किया। ठीक है, कोई भी अच्छा वाला ले लो YAML कन्वर्जन, ये ले लो मस्जिद दो, क्या ये, और वो आपको देखो यहाँ पर आप क्या बोलेंगे, लेफ्ट साइड आपका क्या प्रॉपर्टीज है ना, तो आप यहाँ पेस्ट करेंगे है ना, और उसको यहाँ क्लिक करेंगे, ये आपका उसका उसका हो गया YAML फाइल। समझ रहा है? तो स्प्रिंग डेटा सोर्स, फिर ड्राइवर नेम एक ही बार आएगा ना, ये सब उसके चाइल्ड है, और फिर स्प्रिंग डेटा स्प्रिंग JPA है ना। इस बात तुमको समझ में नहीं आ रही, तो ये कॉपी करने का और फिर अपने एप्लीकेशन में आने का। तो ये प्रॉपर्टीज कौन से में है, रिसोर्सेज में है ना, या राइट क्लिक करें, न्यू करें और एक फाइल बनाए। क्या बनाए? फाइल, तो उसका नाम क्या दिए, एप्लीकेशन डॉट YAML। बन गई YAML फाइल। और अपना पूरा का पूरा सेटिंग यहाँ डाल दिए, पेस्ट कर दिए, और इस फाइल को सारा कमेंट कर दिए। तो इस फाइल का कमेंट रहता है हैश। प्रॉपर्टी फाइल का कमेंट क्या रहता, पाइथन में कमेंट क्या है, पाइथन में कमेंट क्या है,
हैश।
तो इसको सारा कमेंट कर दिया, तो ये फाइल अभी है ही नहीं, डिलीटेड फाइल समझो। अब वो क्या करेगा, सारे सेटिंग कैसे उठाएगा, सिर्फ नाम होना चाहिए एप्लीकेशन, क्या होना चाहिए, नाम। तो वो रिसोर्सेज फोल्डर में जाएगा और एप्लीकेशन नाम की फाइल, भले वो प्रॉपर्टीज हो भले वो YAML हो, कोई भी एक्सटेंशन हो, वो पिकअप करेगा और आपका स्टार्ट कर देगा एप्लीकेशन। ठीक है, तो मैं सेव किया और अभी एप्लीकेशन को रीरन कर लेते हैं। तो इट विल रन द सेम वे इट ran when we are using properties file. So understood what is YAML file?
Yes.
Not understood.
बस ट्री स्ट्रक्चर में आता है।
बस देखो ये क्यों बॉम्ब मार रहा है, ये तो अपन ने कोई चालू था एप्लीकेशन, तो सारे बंद करने का पहले। तो now you should start to troubleshoot and debug your own application. You should not, and then you have the internet for your assistance. चालू हो गया एप्लीकेशन। ठीक है, अब मैं गया मेरे API डॉग में, मुझे API टेस्ट करना है, तो मेरा एंड पॉइंट रेडी है। इसके लिए वो यहाँ बना के रख देने का उसको, ताकि बार बार यूज़ कर सके आपको। ठीक है, अब फ्रैंक और फ्रैंक जो है वो 28 ईयर्स का है, सेंड किया तो अभी 3 आ गया है ना, वैसे का वैसे ही रन कर रहा है प्रोजेक्ट, वैसे का वैसे रन कर रहा है।
डेटाबेस में भी 3 रिकॉर्ड हो गए।
यस,
यानी कि वो ऐसे टाइम से एक ही दे रहा।
क्रिएट ड्रॉप टेस्टिंग एनवायरनमेंट में यूज करते कि मुझे कुछ टेस्टिंग करना है कुछ डेटा के ऊपर, तो मैं टेस्टिंग करूंगा, टेस्टिंग के बाद मुझे डेटा रखना नहीं है ना, वो डिलीट कर दूंगा डेटा को। उसको बोलते हैं क्लीन अप। क्या बोलते हैं उसको? टेस्टिंग के बाद में डेटा को इरेज करने को क्लीन अप बोलते हैं, तो वो क्लीन अप कर देता है डेटा को इसका।